What's going on, everyone? Chris here with Clutter Reduction Junk Removal in Southeast Florida. We are at an apartment building right now to pick up some items. It originally was just going to be a couple of mattresses, and then towards the end of the phone call, he said, by the way, there might be a couch and some tables and some stuff like that. It's just whatever I can't sell. And this was like a conversation from yesterday. So I'm expecting there to be a lot more than what he says. And he told me originally that there was an elevator, but when I looked it up, all I saw was stairs. So I'm hoping he's right, because I did the Murphy workout on Memorial Day, which is like with a 20-pound weighted vest, you do a mile run, 100 pull-ups, 200 push-ups, 300 squats, a mile run. And you can't intertwine them either. You have to do one exercise at a time. So it kind of burns you out, and I'm very much in pain everywhere in my upper body and my quads. So I'm hoping there's an elevator, because that would not be fun to bring down a king mattress down 3 flights of stairs and a sleeper sofa and all that stuff. So sincerely hoping that's not the case. My shoulders are on fire. I found other alternative to walk into the elevator, so it's not as long as a walk as I thought it was when I first got up there. We're taking the mattress right now. And then the couch is going to be a little tricky because it'll fit in the elevator. I can walk in backwards, stand it up, and shimmy it in, like we talked about in that senior living facility, which I'll throw up on the screen. But getting it out of the front door is going to be a little tough, because they have like one of those like little like walls right next to it on a diagonal. So I'll probably have to take it out on a dolly and kind of angle it outside, and then pull it up myself by hand, and then put it on the hand truck. And I'm not going to record it because it started off with 2 guys, and now there's 4. They're like all roommates, and they're all sitting in there smoking weed and talking, and I don't like the smell of weed, and I don't want to be in there any longer than I have to. So we're just kind of grabbing and going. So you guys saw a picture of that couch, pretty tall. So what I'm going to do with the elevator, because it goes up inside, we're going to go backwards with the hand truck this way, and then we'll come down on the angle and then swoop up. And that's how you get a couch in. And if it sounds easier than it is, it's because it is. So we literally go on backwards when you have a high ceiling like this. Like, look at how much extra clearance I have. Do the same thing at like apartment buildings. I don't have to do it at his. You go up backwards, and then you stand it up, and then you just kick it back out to get out. So the couch doesn't stand up out here. So we're basically just gonna drag it in pretty much the same way we would with the hand truck. We're just gonna be pulling it ourselves, and then we'll shimmy it out with our foot, and then we'll stick it on the hand truck. So just a couple more extra steps, but you know, it's doable. So I'll show you what that looks like. Just me and a couch. So now we're pretty stuck in here. When we get to the door opens, we're just gonna kind of kick the bottom of it and push it out, and then we'll stick it back on the dolly. You do the same thing with the hand truck though. And we're back. Now we're heading out to the truck. Nobody said that the hand truck wouldn't fall. So what I did with the couch, you would do the exact same thing with the hand truck. You just wouldn't have to manhandle it like that. And you would do the same thing going out. So I didn't show you the going out because for whatever reason, the alarm instantly went off, which it just doesn't like movers. I don't know. See if I can do this backwards. So Doesn't it look like I'm going in reverse? I'm not though. I'm trying to steer it. So what we just did is the same thing you would do with a hand truck. You just wouldn't have to manhandle it. The only reason I couldn't do it with a hand truck was because I couldn't stand it up in that ceiling height outside of the elevator, which it happens. You know, you have a low ceiling sometimes. So anytime you can take something off a dolly, you instantly are saving yourself a few inches. It's the same thing like with using the drag pad, like laying down a blanket and dragging something across the floor versus putting it on a dolly. You're saving, 3 to 5 inches depending on how high your casters are. You know, if I put something on a dolly or on a hand truck and I sit it up on its angle, it's up as high as the axle is or the tires. So by having that up there, I'm instantly adding, 5-6 inches to it, maybe a little bit more. So take something off of it and use a little bit of power, but use technique, makes things a lot easier. So if you guys haven't started doing surcharges yet, if you're low and newer, you have things like long walks or stairs. How do you come up with a pricing for that? I would say figure out a dollar amount that you want to make per hour of work. And when you have a long walk and you have to make multiple trips, think about how much time it's going to take you to walk. So let's say, for example, you're going to walk across the length of a football field, 300 feet. Let's say it takes you, 3 minutes to walk. Not like a casual, slow, but like actually walk, like with intention. It takes you 3 minutes. Now you know, okay, every time I go to an apartment building, if I have to walk as far as Chris is right now, it's probably collectively maybe 300 feet each way. So if I know, okay, I have to get 6 pieces, it's going to take me 6 trips, then I'm going to be adding 1,200 feet. So that's going to take me an extra 15-20 minutes. So if I pay myself $50 an hour, or let's say $60 an hour for math purposes, and I know, okay, it's going to take me an extra 15 minutes to do this job, I'm going to want to tack on a quarter of what I would pay myself. So for a 300-foot walk, I might want to tack on an extra $15. And it's just to help pay for your time a little bit. All right, that job is complete. We went to the dump. It was $12.18 to get rid of everything, along with some other small stuff I had in there from a previous job. Now we're dropping off the trailer at the compound, and that'll be it for the day. So I figured while we were talking about surcharges from the job, we would continue on with some further examples and explain why we charge for those extra surcharges. But I want to say, if you are brand new in junk removal, I would highly recommend that you just stick to the basics. Stick to volume, stick to extra time, until you are comfortable quoting jobs before you start adding all these extra factors that are going to affect your price. It can be confusing if you're trying to do all these things at once. So stick with the basics until you get the hang of it, and then you can start factoring these in. It's not going to kill you to lose a little bit of money in the first couple of months. Now, before we start talking about the examples, I want to give a little bit of a foundation for what would be a typical junk removal job, and I believe most of my other haulers would agree. I would say your best case scenario, other than like curbside pickup, would be to park in a customer's driveway, have like a 20-foot walk to the front door, everything is first floor, you don't have to sit there and move stuff around, you just grab the piece and go. Even better if you don't have to worry about taking it apart. That is the fastest option, and that's what junk removal is all about. It's a point-and-go service, which is why we have all these surcharges to make up for it when it is not. Now, the national average by association of most franchises is about 2 hours to load a truck using 2 people. Now, this is the franchises that use the junk trucks, and they're all roughly the same size. So if you have a smaller vehicle, it probably won't take you that long. If you have a bigger vehicle, it might take you longer. So you have to account into that. But I would say most people, for their full load, are expecting to have about 1 ton in weight for household materials. And for example purposes, we're going to say that for 1 ton, your disposal fee is $100, just for math purposes. Now, I went ahead and made a little bit of an example here. Let's just say your full truck price is $600. 2 hours to fill it, 1 ton in weight, $100. Let's just say you pay each of your employees $20 an hour. If it takes your guys 2 hours to fill a truck with 2 people, that is 4 working hours. That is $80 in cost, plus $100 in disposal, which means that the $600 is now $420, which is to go towards your business operations, your expenses, your taxes, and your profit. That covers everything else, right? Those front 2 are like the main expenses of junk removal outside of operations. Now, all of these surcharges we're going to talk about are going to hinder that $420 profit level, and we're going to talk about why and then what you can do to make up for it. So, getting off into the list, we're going to start with heavy item, which not everybody charges, but pretty much all the franchises do. So, a heavy item for me personally would be something that if I were to take dresser A and put it next to dresser B, and they're pretty much the same size, but dresser A weighs twice as much because of one factor, the type of material and or in addition to it, I'm going to charge a little extra for that, because otherwise it's going to be adding a significant difference in weight to my truck despite the volume being the same. And if we charge by volume and then we get charged by weight at the dump, there's going to be a surplus in my disposal that I am not factoring into my cost of my full load. So, for example, that dresser, let's say one of them's just a standard wood dresser, probably get it from like IKEA or something. It weighs 150, 200 pounds. And then you have this solid oak dresser with a granite slab attached to the top. A little icing on the cake there. And all of a sudden, this weighs like close to 300 pounds. Very realistic, actually. Same size, double the weight. Now, that's just one example. In addition to that same load, maybe you have a nice thick piece of glass in there that belongs to a dining room table. 3/4 inches thick, maybe it's like 6 feet long, 4 feet wide, probably weighs almost 200 pounds, maybe even a little bit more. That, you could compare it to the size of a canvas painting board that you can get from Michael's. They probably weigh 15, 20 pounds, but they're the same size. If you got a big one, throw one of those in your truck, you now have a 200 plus pound difference. Let's keep going. Let's say in the garage, customer says, hey, I have all these bricks over here. Can you take them? Not a huge pile of bricks. A standard red brick is about 4 pounds. So if you have a stack of them, let's just say it's 100 of them, 400 pounds. But 100 bricks isn't really too much different than one single nightstand. Think about the weight comparison. 50 pounds versus 400. 350 pounds extra. 150 pounds extra for the dresser. Let's just say 150 pounds extra for the glass if you were to compare it to something else other than the lightest thing in the world. All of a sudden, you're pushing those numbers. Let's just say you had another item in there and it put you up to 1,000 pounds in surplus to what you were expecting. Now, you go to the dump. Instead of being 1 ton, it is now 1.5 tons, which if you're getting charged $100 per ton, now your disposal is $150, which means that now your new profit level, instead of 420, is now 370. And then just like that, you lost profit, $50 of it. Now, if you were to charge a little bit extra for those few items that are abnormally different in weight compared to the overall standard volume, now, let's say you charge an extra $50. You would make up the difference. Even better, if you charge, let's say, $20 per an item, and you charge $60, now you just increased your profit to $430. You added profit. You have no way of knowing exactly how much that stuff's going to weight. So instead of sitting there and trying to guess it, you can just do a flat rate number, and sometimes you might come out below, sometimes you might come out on top. It balances out. But it's just to help prevent that loss of profit. In addition to weight, heavier items typically hold more risk for handling and or property damage if something were to fall or slip out of somebody's hand or fall off the hand truck, whatever. So you can also build a little bit of a surplus over time to help cover those extra expenses if they were to come up. The next thing would be stairs, probably one of the more common ones. Whether you have a basement, an attic, you have to go up flights of stairs in a house, you have an apartment building, whatever the reason. Stairs hinder time. They make things more difficult because now handling is a little bit different. It just knocked out one of your most main pieces of equipment, which is a dolly. Now you're stuck to a hand truck. And oftentimes you need somebody to help you handle that piece without causing damage to the property. So not only did it cost you more time, but now it's also going to factor in the fact that you need to pay somebody else more money to help you on your job. So now you get hit with time and labor costs. So let's say, for example, you're going to a third floor and it added 30 minutes to your overall job time. Going back to that 2-hour load. Now, instead of it being 4 hours for 2 guys to get a job done, working hours, and costing $80, now it's going to cost you $90. Not a big difference, but it adds up. You do that over a span of a year, you might be building up to thousands of dollars in extra cost. And that's just one measly example. So your new profit level would be $410 instead of $420. But if you were to charge per a flight of stairs, maybe $10 a flight, you would have charged $30, only cost you $10, you would have made a $20 surplus on top of that, which now you could either put that towards your employees who are doing extra work, or you could set it aside into a surplus pool because that could handle any damage claims in the future or workers' comp claims in the future if any of your guys were to get hurt. All right, everything has a place it can go for surplus. The next thing would be elevators. All the same examples apply to elevators as they do to stairs. Don't discount elevators from taking more time. Every time you go up a flight of floor, nobody is stopping anybody from pushing that call button and stopping that elevator. You have to open it up and say, hi, sorry, we're working, continue on. That happens 3 times on average. Let's just say it's 1 minute each, not a big deal, but you make 10 trips. That's an extra half-hour time. Same example with stairs. In addition, you are at a higher liability because you are riding in a confined square or rectangle that is very expensive. Elevators are not cheap. Damage to elevators, if you are caught by property management, a claim is not cheap. So you are adding to your risk factor when it comes to insurance. Next up, power tools. When it comes to power tools, I personally will charge extra if I have to use my Sawzall to cut something up because that's an abnormal tool for most household residential jobs. Or if I have to take apart something that will otherwise take me like 10 to 15 minutes. I personally don't charge for any kind of disassembly unless it's going to take me some time, and I'll usually throw on a time charge for that personally. So, for example, if you need to take apart an entertainment center that's real intricate, it's probably going to take you like a half hour, I'm charging for that extra half hour, but I'm not going to charge for the use of my power drill to take it apart. For me, that's more for efficiency. But my Sawzall, for example, that's a little bit more of a specialty item. If I have to use that to cut up a 20-foot piece of board that's not going to fit in my truck otherwise, or maybe I need to use it to cut off all the bells and whistles on this DIY workbench inside of somebody's back patio because they built it in the patio and it won't fit out the door otherwise, that is an additional thing that I need to do. I'm going to charge for that tool because, number one, power tools are not cheap. They break, they get lost, they get stolen, they need repairs, you need to replace them every now and then. Usually you have to buy some kind of attachment to go to it, whether it's a saw blade or you have to buy a drill bit. The list goes on. So you ever hear someone says, this power tool may be thousands of dollars, there's a good chance they're probably paying for that power tool through their jobs. So let's just say, for example, I charge $10 every time I need to use my Sawzall, despite the situation, right? It's just a little bit more dangerous, it's a hazard, it's not as easy as just picking something up and throwing it in my truck. I instantly just charge $10. Let's say I do that 100 times over the span of a year. I just made an additional $1,000 off of that one Sawzall. Now, for that Sawzall, that paid for the Sawzall, that paid for the blaze, that paid for the hazard and the risk because nothing happened in the present. Let's say I cut my finger one day, I have to go to urgent ER and get stitches for $400. That $1,000 is going to go towards that $400. It's going to pay for it. Maybe I need to get a new Sawzall in the future. That's going to pay for it. And then I'll still have a little bit of surplus. That is what you're trying to do. You're trying to build profit to cover potential risks and or the in the situation surpluses and costs. Next up, probably the most common overall charge, time. You should be charging for time. Junk removal gets charged based by volume, but that doesn't mean that we want to sit here for hours at a time trying to wait for you to decide what you want to take. You should be charging for anything that is taking you significantly longer than it should. If it's a few minutes, let it go. Don't be a jerk. 5 minutes, whatever. But if it's going to take you an additional 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, an hour, hours, you should be charging for that. And the reason being is it's costing you more money to have you or your employees on a job. We talked about that in the example. A 2-hour job for a full truck costs $80. What happens if it takes them additional 2 hours to do it because of some unforeseen circumstances? Now it's $160. Guess what? That $160 just dropped your profit down to $340. You just lost $80 in what was supposed to be going towards your operation expenses, your profit, and paying yourself as a business owner. You are constantly going to be losing money if you are not paying for that extra time. So, an example would be like a clean out. Let's say you walk into a house, they say everything goes. Okay, you have stuff in the cabinets, stuff on the floor, stuff on the coffee table, stuff on the dining room table, stuff under the bed, things on the floor in the patio. You have stuff outside along the side yard. You have to pick up all that stuff, bring it to your truck. No matter what your strategy is, that is going to take you more time and you need to charge for that. Another common surcharge that's kind of relevant to the heavy item would be construction debris. Construction debris is a more dense material than household furniture is. The weight of a stack of drywall is significantly going to be heavier than a stack of furniture. A stack of pavers, a stack of a bunch of metal, a stack of a bunch of wood, a stack of a bunch of roofing material. The list goes on. Anything construction material wise is typically going to be heavier than the alternative. And when you throw that into a heavy load, you might be going to the dump of 2 tons now instead of 1 ton for the same amount of volume or even less volume. So you want to charge extra for that. Some people charge by increment and they'll do like a flat rate fee. Some people will just do a flat rate fee regardless of how much room it takes up. Because when you go to the dumps, most places will charge a separate price for vegetation, a separate price for construction debris, and a separate price for trash, which is pretty much everything else. So if you're rolling up with construction debris, even if it's like half furniture, half construction debris, you're probably going to get charged for construction debris altogether. So sometimes it helps to just do a flat rate fee regardless, whether it's $50, $100 or more, whatever you feel comfortable with charging. So just something to keep in mind. And then some other like smaller surcharges, you don't necessarily have to do them, but I feel like it kind of just comes along with the game. You have like a sanitation fee. If you have to go get PPE equipment, you want to charge for that extra cost of having to go buy a hazmat suit or have to go buy booties or gloves or respiratory masks or goggles because you're going to a hoarder house and there's active dust everywhere or there's roaches or rats everywhere. All those type of things can make you sick if you're not careful. So you may want to charge a little extra for that, number one, to make the job worth it. Number two, like we talked about with the liability risk, you're putting money aside in case something happens. What were to happen if you got a respiratory infection from a hoarder house because you didn't bother wearing a mask or any kind of PPE equipment, and now you can't work for a week? If you didn't charge anything extra for that job, you just flat out took yourself out for a week. At least if you charge a little extra to cover all the potential risks and to cover the equipment, you would have been in a better situation and either would have prevented it altogether or at least had a little extra to help cover the overall expenses. So just a few things to kind of keep in mind. There's a lot of things out there you can charge extra for. I personally, because everyone works in a slightly different environment, different location, handles different customers, I personally would stick to some of the basics that are bound to happen. And then as you do jobs and you start to notice, this one thing keeps happening to me and it usually causes some kind of issue, that might be something you can make your own surcharge for. It doesn't have to go with everybody else. This is the cool thing about business is you get to do whatever the hell you want. So something to keep in mind when it comes to giving actual pricing for each thing, I usually try to reference it off of my overall time, like we talked about in the very beginning, where if I want to pay myself $60 an hour, okay, every 15 minutes at $15. If it was $100 an hour, every 15 minutes is $25. So if I think, okay, going up and down flights of stairs, if going up and down elevators, long walks, using my power tools, I might want to just take small increments of each of that and throw it over. And then if it requires a little bit more labor, maybe tack on an extra 5, 10, 15 bucks or whatever, just to make it worth it. And you can kind of start building off of numbers like that. And if you start to notice that, you get to a job and you tell them it's going to be 250 bucks when it should have been 200, but you had an extra surcharge in there, and you start to see that failing a lot, maybe you need to tone it back a little. But it's all meant to help cover those extra profit losses. So I hope that gives you guys an idea. If you do something that I didn't mention, comment down below and tell us why you do it and what kind of examples it applies to. Maybe it'll give an idea to somebody and it applies to them in the location. So that is it for me. We are going to go clean our garage because our storage unit is officially done. So I will see you guys next time. Bye.